She didn't look like a soldier. That's what the guy near the loading dock muttered when she stepped out of the Humvee in those sun-bleached cargo pants and desert-worn boots. Looked more like a contractor or someone dropping off paperwork. No rank on her sleeves, no name tape on her chest. She just stood there, one hand resting on a rucksack, the other adjusting a watch faded by more time than fashion. The driver didn't speak, just handed her a manila folder and drove off. No fanfare, no handshake, no salute. And when someone finally opened that folder 3 days later, after everything had gone sideways, it held a letter signed by a general, for photos stamped classified in red ink, and a single sentence scribbled at the bottom. If she's here, it means your house was already on fire. Before we dive in, if you agree that skill should speak louder than uniform, louder than ego, louder than noise, like and subscribe. This story deserves to be remembered. They were 2 days into tactical engineering school at Camp Windrow when she showed up. No introduction, no briefing, just a name scribbled at the bottom of the week's schedule. Special Consultant, Holt. Most of the recruits assumed it was a typo. Some joke that maybe Holt was a brand rep for field equipment, maybe someone there to test new boots. Others noticed the cargo pants and made louder jokes. Guess the thrift store's running a camo sale. One recruit muttered, tugging at the collar of his fresh-pressed uniform. A few laughed. Loudest among them was Dorian Kale, 25, top of his ROTC class, and utterly convinced the world was already his to command. Bet she's here to do our laundry after we blow the doors off the simulation site, he smirked. The rest chuckled, more out of wanting to fit in than agreement. No one asked her name. No one saluted. She didn't offer a smile or a correction, just a calm nod and a quiet scan of the yard. Her eyes didn't linger on faces. They swept lines in the dirt, traced the weld seams on the breech doors, counted pressure ridges around the training compound's perimeter. She moved like she already knew how the story would end, and knew most of them wouldn't be ready. Each morning the recruits marched out in formation, boots squeaking, rifles slung, posture sharp. She was already there, leaning against a barrel, or sitting cross-legged near the obstacle line, lacing up her boots slow and steady like the sun hadn't risen until she said it could. Recruits made a game out of it. Cargo sightings, they called it. They tallied how many pockets her pants had. Dorian started a betting pool. 3-to-1 she's X supply. Logistics, maybe. Probably broke a copy machine one day, and they gave her a commendation for valor. They laughed harder the more she said nothing. That silence, it unnerved the ones paying attention. Because silence is easy when you have nothing to prove. It's harder when you've already proven more than they'll ever know. The instructor, Master Sergeant Jakes, said little. He ran drills like a man paid by the decibel. Voice like gravel, hands like engine parts. On the third day, he added a line to the scenario brief. If you hit an impasse, call in the demo specialist. The recruits grinned. Another prop, another stage gimmick for the war games. Jakes let them laugh. He always did. And somewhere in the background, Holt stood quietly beside a stack of deactivated claymores, arms crossed, like she'd heard this script before, like she'd starred in it more times than they could count. The first exercise was a disaster. They failed to breach a mock barricade within the timer. Dorian had taken point, barked orders, snapped hand signals like they meant something. He missed the decoy tripwire on the right flank. 2 recruits got blown by simulation charges. One forgot to log the breach order. Jakes just scribbled notes and blew the whistle. If this was real, he said calmly, you'd be zippered into body bags right now. Dorian didn't look rattled. Just blamed the soil conditions, the fog, the misaligned compass. No one corrected him, except her. She passed by the map table later, paused just long enough to murmur, your fog came from the east. You planned for the wrong wind. That's why your secondary charge didn't clear. Dorian scoffed, but she was already walking away. He turned red, laughed loud, and said, oh look, cargo pants come with a built-in attitude. Some laughed again, but fewer this time. By the 4th day, even the jokes started to feel thin. Holt was always there, measuring, checking, jotting small notes in a waterproof field book. She didn't lecture, didn't correct, but she watched. One night, a quieter recruit named Finn approached her during mess. You were Yodi, weren't you? He asked, barely above a whisper. She didn't confirm, just looked at him, calm and steady, and said, you ever feel the dirt shift before you see the wire? He nodded slowly. Then trust that. It'll save your fingers. Finn said nothing more. But from then on, he listened closer than anyone. Still, to most, she was the shadow behind the drills. Background. Optional. Even when she knelt in the mud to adjust the failing hydraulic brace on the fake compound door, fixing it in under 3 minutes with nothing but a multi-tool and a length of paracord, Dorian waved it off. A monkey could have done that. Doesn't make her a war hero. That night, Holt sat alone near the range tower. No phone. No music. Just her and the wind. Someone passing by swore they saw a name etched into her blade handle. For letters. Burned, not carved. But no one got close enough to read it. Jakes watched from a distance. Said nothing. But the next morning, the demo specialist line on the ops board was circled in red. And then came the breach drill. The one they were sure they could handle. The one that changed everything. It started like any other morning. Boots on gravel, field packs checked, safety wires clipped in nervous fingers. The air was heavy with fog and overconfidence. Dorian stood in front of the squad briefing like he already knew the outcome. They'd run this breach drill on paper half a dozen times, watched walkthroughs on the projector in the mess, argued strategy over breakfast. But today was the live run. Real terrain, real pressure plates, real consequences if you stepped in the wrong place. Holt stood off to the side again. Same cargo pants, same calm. No one invited her into the circle. No one asked her to weigh in. Dorian even made a show of glancing at her boots and muttering, "Don't slip in the mud, sweetheart." One of the other recruits snorted. Holt didn't look at him. She was too busy watching the birds lift off the east tree line. 3 seconds before the first charge went off. Because yes, the terrain was familiar. But the pattern had changed. Jakes had rotated the breaching field. And no one had thought to check the wind. 2 minutes in, they'd triggered the decoy net. 3 of them were down, caught in a kill box simulated by pressure sensors. Dorian shouted orders. Too fast, too loud, trying to cover his panic. Finn hesitated. "We need to loop the back crawl," he said. "It's not wired the same." Dorian snapped. "It's a distraction. Stay with the plan." But the plan, like the training compound, was wired to fail. When the team rounded the final corner, half the sensors were still live. Finn tripped one. Alarms blared. Mission failed. Debrief started cold. Jakes didn't yell. You just flipped the switch on the projector and showed them the drone footage. "You built a plan off old assumptions," he said. "You got killed by a shadow." Then, after a pause, he keyed the radio mic clipped to his vest. "Specialist, you got a minute." It was quiet for a moment. Then her voice came through the comms. Low, steady, no urgency. "On my way." Holt walked in from the tree line. Same pace as always, stepping between wires the team hadn't even seen. She didn't flinch at the faux explosives. She didn't hesitate when Jakes handed her the schematic. "You've got 5 minutes," he said. She looked at the diagram, shook her head. "I'll need 3. Dorian's laugh died in his throat when she dropped to one knee and marked 6 faults the engineers had missed: blind zones, miscalibrated sensors, overlapping trigger paths. She explained none of it. Just moved. Tape here. Cut there. Rewired a secondary switch using the metal rim of her own dog tack. By the time she stood, the field was cold. No alarms. No lights. Clean. Jakes raised his chin toward the team. "That," he said, "is how you clear ground you've never walked on." Dorian said nothing. No one did. Until Jakes added, "You want to know who she is? She built the breach doctrine you just fumbled through." The air changed. Someone whispered, "Wait, the Holt doctrine?" A pause. Then another voice. "I thought that was a guy." Jakes smiled faintly. "Yeah, a lot of people did." Holt just turned, unsnapped her gloves, and walked away. The mud on her boots made no sound. But something else followed her, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but earned. And it stayed with them. Especially when someone asked Jakes later that night what her MOS used to be. He said, "She doesn't have a specialty. She is the specialty." Dorian didn't laugh again that week. It came at 0400 on the 6th day. A final field op meant to simulate real-world chaos. Conflicting orders, low visibility, delayed intel. Sleep-deprived and overconfident, the recruits hit the terrain before sunrise, boots thudding on wet ground, helmets rattling with adrenaline and mistakes. Dorian led again. Assigned, not chosen, chest puffed under a flak vest 2 sizes too proud. The mission was simple on paper. Breach the outer defense ring of a mock enemy compound. Clear the perimeter, mark the ingress points. But the field wasn't what it seemed. The moment they entered, they lost signal. No GPS, no comms. Fog thicker than smoke, and tripwires strung so fine you could lose a foot before you heard the click. 10 minutes in, the team was split. Fenn called out a warning too late. Sanchez slipped on the wet incline and rolled straight into a pressure pad zone. Not real explosives, but the lights that flared red meant he was gone. Dorian barked orders again, louder this time, more desperate, trying to sound like command when he barely had control. Fall back. Double back. It's a cross loop, damn it. He was right, and also wrong. The setup had changed again. Jakes had handed them a scrambled version of the field grid, a twist he warned about, but no one heard over their own certainty. The traps weren't just environmental. They were psychological, designed to trigger panic before detonation. And it worked. 2 more recruits lost before they even reached the fake wall breach. Then the wind shifted, just a breeze through the trees. But Holt, watching from the ridgeline, noticed what they hadn't. The scent of ozone. A timed chemical marker. Simulated, yes, but lethal in a real-world op. That's when Jakes, standing beside the observation tent, lifted the radio and spoke 3 words that changed everything. Colin Holt. His tone wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise like a scalpel. And from the treeline, she moved. No vest. No shouting. Just calm. She crossed the field in under 60 seconds, boots avoiding every tripwire like they were landmarks, not hazards. She ducked into the breach zone, eyes sweeping the compound, then the ground, then the recruits, still pinned behind cover, still not realizing they'd boxed themselves into a blast funnel. Dorian stared. "What's she doing?" he whispered. Finn didn't answer. He just watched. Holt crouched by a signal box near the edge of the wall, ran a gloved hand over the wires. She clicked her comm open, now restored, somehow, and calmly said, "Fault pattern found. Tied to a delayed trigger. You've got a dummy zone layered over a real hazard." She didn't wait for orders. She just moved. And the recruits, this time, followed. She rerouted a det line, reversed a remote charge, then turned and ordered Dorian to cut a green wire near his left boot. "Not the red?" he asked, unsure. "No," she said. "Red's there to test your ego. Green's the one listening." He hesitated, then obeyed. When he did, the lights died. The field went dark. Clean. Jake stepped into the clearing just as the last warning beacon faded. "She built that zone herself," he said quietly. 2 years ago, in Syria, before half of you had even seen a live round." The recruits turned to her, this time with something closer to reverence. But Holt didn't gloat. She just looked around, then knelt and pulled a single folded photo from her vest pocket, placed it against the mock wall. A grainy image, 3 soldiers standing beside a collapsed bridge, all smiling, only one still alive. She tapped the photo once, whispered something no one heard, then stood. Simulation complete, she said into the comm, team extracted. And when she walked back through the field, no one mocked the cargo pants. No one laughed. They stood, not because of regulation, but because something inside them finally recognized what silence looks like when it walks through fire and never asks for applause. Later that day, her name was written in the training manual's margin, not typed, not formal, just scribbled in pen beside a single phrase. "When everything fails, call Holt." And every recruit, even Dorian, made a silent promise they never said aloud. Next time, they'd recognize experience before it had to save them.